Hey everybody, special live once again, and two live streams today, two guests. A lot of fun here. The man that I'm about to introduce is normally the on the other side. He's normally writing something and making cogent comments and think that thing makes me think and makes my head hurt sometimes. Just kidding. But but this time he is the guest and he's got very special news that he definitely needs to share with the community, and I've encouraged him. And so here we are, Joseph. When I pronounce your last name, Armendariz? Is that correct? Is that how I'm gonna do it?
Armendariz, A-R-M, Armendariz.
Armendariz. Okay, Joseph Armendariz. Hey, Joseph, tell us a little about yourself, my man.
Besides being a diehard Raider fan, the Raider aspect of me was when I was a very little kid, I was a big Marcus Allen fan. I played at USC, and being here in Los Angeles, they inevitably Raiders traded for him, and that was my first initial fandom started when I was a kid. But a little historical background, one of my uncles went to the early 70 Rose Bowl games. And before I think I was even born or about to be born, he bought me a Super Bowl ribbon from one of the years that they won it. So it was destined for me to be a Raider fan, definitely.
Who was your first Raider game?
I think, I had to be maybe around 12 years old. My uncle took me.
Wow.
And, it was in the L.A. Coliseum.
That was 19 what?
It was about 85.
1985, okay.
Yeah.
So how did...
But I remember the 82 game, ironically enough. I have one of those memories I remember all the way to the age of 3. So that's my first memory is about 3 years old.
I remember being born. I got you beat. But hey, so tell us about. I feel like I'm mumbling because I feel like I sort of started this. You took my words to heart. Tell everybody what you did and what happened, please.
Well, I had text yesterday that one of the things I thought would be advantageous for Antonio Brown would be doing hyperbaric treatment. Mm-hmm. I personally had an issue with an injury, and wasn't healing fast enough. And I did treatment, which is put to, if everybody remembers the Michael Jackson tube that he was laying down in, that's hyperbaric treatment. Mm-hmm. And what it is, it pumps your body with additional oxygen. So you're basically at optimal levels of oxygen in your bloodstream. And obviously that promotes healing faster. And so what I did do, I got to thinking about today, I'm not going to be too shy about it, and I know Zenny's really busy with his other things. And I just took a stab and called the Raider facilities, the corporate offices, and I told them exactly what I just mentioned to you briefly. And the young lady that answered the phone told me to hold on. After maybe less than a minute, someone picked up, and it sounded like they transferred me over to a training facility. And when the gentleman spoke, the voice sounded very familiar to me, and I don't know if he sounded like the guy that was talking on the Hard Knocks, Rod Martin. Mm-hmm. And it could very well be him. Mm-hmm. He asked what it was. I told him that I was a Raider fan. Mm-hmm. And so he was a little irritated. It seemed that I got through to him because I was pretty insistent in trying to make that call and trying to get to somebody. Mm-hmm. But he was kind enough, as I mentioned to you, to hear me out. And an interesting thing that I didn't even mention to you was once our conversation was almost over, he did mention, or at least that was what he wanted to relate to me, that his feet were getting better.
Oh, good. Hey, tell my viewers what happened to Antonio Brown's feet from your perspective that caused you to come up with this suggestion.
Well, I saw the blisters on his feet, and basically any blister, anything that's affecting the feet can be considered a wound. And so when I saw that, I know when I had my injury, it was a lot worse than that. And so what was beneficial for me was having the oxygen therapy. Like I said, it goes directly into your bloodstream, and it just promotes the healing faster. So I thought that would be a great way, to not only dry up the blisters, but heal it. That thing about the oxygen therapy, the hyperbaric treatment, it heals from the inside out.
What is it?
So it's not a superficial thing. You're inhaling. You're inside that chamber, and all that oxygen is just pumping through your bloodstream, through your body.
Hey, when you go into this chamber, what does it look like? I can actually probably pull it up here, but is it? I can pull it up here, but is it a? What does it look like? Hyperbaric chamber.
It's like a tubular. It's basically like a tube, and it's see-through because for those people who are claustrophobic, it might get to you because you could touch your nose almost into the top, depending on how big the chamber is. I mean, basically, you're just kind of in one position on your back, and it's very similar to if you do an MRI, but a lot smaller.
I just found a picture of one I'm putting right here. It's a cylindrical. This one's cylindrical. It's 11,000. You can buy it for $11,800. There is a photograph of a blonde woman holding up a sign that reads "Let's Talk," and it is sold by airsoak.com. Airsoak.com. Excuse me. AIRSOAK.com, and so I'll click on that. Yeah, and so in fact, just as I said that here, Molly Bot, the support agent, pops up and it reads, "Hello, I'm Molly Bot, and I can help you guide you through the site and answer any questions that you have." I'm not going to bother with. That's hilarious. Right on cue. There's Molly Bot ready to sell me a hyperbaric oxygen chamber with a 3-year warranty. $11,800. So if you have $11,800 you want to part company with for a hyperbaric chamber, you now, sorry about that, folks. You now know where to get one. There's a hyperbaric chamber. Hey, so I was driving along and a fellow was on the local radio station here, 92.9 The Game Sports, here in the Atlanta area, and Osmandias 7114 says the Raiders should sign Molly Bot. But at any rate, this gentleman was saying that you have to wear special shoes in the chamber, and that Brown didn't, and he said that was so like the Raiders. I mean, can you put some? Do you know what that's about? Do you have to wear special shoes for this? Is that?
Well, it's a cryotherapy, and I think basically it's supposed to be resistant to, for example, anything causing blisters in extreme cold. It's going to affect your skin, heat or cold, and so. And I'm glad you brought that up because I have thoughts, and you let me know how far off my thoughts I can go to. Because when all this happened, all of a sudden he got a lawsuit that he didn't pay for his private trainers. Now I'm thinking maybe he did that because he realized that they screwed up his feet.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about that. So you said that. So he said he didn't pay for his trainers or something?
Yeah, somebody had filed a lawsuit that he never paid for his trainers, but I'm wondering this incident that happened recently, if he felt, wait a minute, you just created blisters on my feet, and now you want me to pay for damaging my feet? And
Wow.
so I'm wondering if that's one of the issues that came up
What do you
with
think?
regards to that.
What do you think this says about the whole idea of teams allowing players to have their own trainers and techniques? Because in this instance, while the Raiders can say, hey, it wasn't our fault, in a lot of ways, I think it was their fault because they should know and be able to take precautions for, accidents or incidents like this, and suggest to him have a list of like do's and don'ts in your training regimen. You know what I mean? In other words, here is, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I 100% agree. If you know, I'm here in LA, so, the biggest team here is the Dodgers, and up there's the Oakland A's. And both teams, I believe, have clause in their contracts so their players have to do all of their external trainings or things that have to do with physical therapy in-house because nobody knows what they're doing outside or whether or not they're following protocol that the team wants them to follow. But I 100% agree that there should be some clause in the contract. But again, we always joke being Raider fans, it's the Raiders being the Raiders, not dotting their I's and crossing their T's, because that's something that should be controlled in-house, or there should be some kind of dialogue and communication between the player and the trainers and the coach. The head coach, hey, coach, I want to do this. Is that cool? Or do we have this so I won't have to go outside our facilities and try this treatment?
And what does that say about Gruden and all this, in your opinion? I mean, I didn't think anyway that it was anything negative. I just thought, I mean, as life unfolds, as the information comes to me, right? My thought is, if Gruden were really a control freak, he would say, "Hey, what's this about? What are you doing?" But it sounds like he's just sort of laissez-faire.
Well, I got that same impression from watching Hard Knocks episodes. And I don't know, I question whether or not he's being that way because the scrutiny's on him, the cameras, or if he's really like that. And, because we're getting to see something we never gotten to see, and that's him during training camp. Mm-hmm. We see the press conference where he's always speaking with this bravado, but you did have an instance where it looked like Abram was kind of telling him stuff, even though he was joking, right? Uh-huh. We never get the impression that any player is going to talk to Gruden the way Abram did.
I think, that's interesting.
And to be fair, I'm sure that's just kind of a give and take. But the impression that I think we get usually about Gruden and how hard-nosed he is, that was the last thing that I expected. But I did think he was being laissez-faire about this whole thing.
I view John as somebody to be afraid of. I've known John since 1998. When we met, it was through a mutual friend of ours, Charlie Santana Jr., and I gotta call Chucky. Anyway, Charlie's dad, this is Raider lore. This is deep Raider lore. Charlie's dad, Charlie Santana Sr., was one of the members of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors that was instrumental in bringing the Raiders back to Oakland from Los Angeles. And so I was invited to the Raiders season ticket holder party. This is when Amy Trask was the CEO of the Raiders. And when we had a great raffle and luncheon and trivia contest. Charlie introduced me to a guy named, forgot Pete's last name, but he was Mike Tyson's cut doctor. This guy was 7 feet tall. And I remember John had invited me personally to come by the Raider office because I've always been a big football strategy guy. I mean, have my own playbooks to this day and everything else. And I've had playbooks since I was 16. Anyway, and I didn't really believe him, so I didn't take him up on it. I should have, but I didn't. And then I ran into John at the 2004 Lee Steinberg Super Bowl party in Houston. And I reminded him of when he said, "Hey, let's come by." He goes, "We'll just stand there, get a napkin." Or excuse me, get a fucking napkin, because that's how he talks. And we right there started, I drew up this play. That was actually the play I was going to give him in 1998. I just refined it a little bit. And he kept it, and then that's how we got to know each other. And so I then would see him periodically in New York when he first started working for ESPN and coming to New York to do the draft. So, he's been a sort of a constant fixture there, right? Not like a buddy, but somebody you talk to on occasion, and but I would say last year's NFL annual meeting, I had a play idea. I told him at the combine, because he said at the combine, he goes, I need ideas. I need plays. I need ideas. I said, I'll get one to you. So I drew up a concept for him, and I brought it to the NFL annual meeting, and John had Will Kiss, who was Raiders PR guy, wait for me in the lobby to get the idea. So that's the John that I know. I don't, I've only known him, and I just say, hey, John, this is how you should think about something. He's a quick study. He'll say, okay, I got it. Plus, I'm a little annoying.
Yeah.
When I want you to get something, I can be annoying. And it's kind of like, look, you got to think about it this way. He goes, okay, I got it. We're a couple of Leos, okay? So, and that's my relationship with him. So I don't know,
okay.
And I don't know, and I'll say this to people: don't be afraid of anybody, because if you are in this day and age, if you have an idea, you will never be able to get your idea across to somebody if you think in your head that you don't matter to them or your idea matters. Just focus on getting the idea out and leaving it at that. Hey, so moving forward, what? How do you think? How did he leave the conversation? I'm curious.
Well, it was just someone who answered from the operator. The operator answered, and I told him I have want to know if I could speak to someone with regards to Antonio Brown's foot injury. And I explained briefly what I had mentioned earlier here, and she told me, okay, hold on. And so that's when it was, by less than a minute, it got transferred over to somebody.
Wow. Were you scared?
You know what? That's the thing, is I wish, in hindsight, I was shocked that I got through, right? and that actually put me through somebody who's in the know.
Yeah.
That I was in complete shock when they picked up, and you could hear like training facility work, or you hear something in the background, right? And so I didn't have, my composure came back, but initially I was like, oh wow, what do I do now? So, but for the most part, I'm always calm and collected. And so I was able to get my point across. And what I did was not only tell them my suggestion, I took it from a personal standpoint. This is what happened to me, and this is how effectively it worked for me. And I thought it would be a great idea to see if that could be an option that you can do for Antonio. And the trainer that I spoke to said he agreed that it could possibly work for blisters and certain ulcers. But by rule, he wasn't a big proponent of hyperbaric. And, I just left it at that. I said, okay, well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. And we left it at that.
Do you remember what the guy's voice sounded like, though? Because he says...
Yeah, that's why I said Rod Martin, because it sounded like him. Because it sounded like they transferred somebody who was a person of authority.
Yeah.
Because even his tone, the way he was speaking to me, was one of not only is he one that's a decision maker, but he was in the know. Because that's the same person that told me, well, his feet look like they're getting a lot better.
Was the guy's voice deep?
It sounded like, no, it was kind of almost like my voice, and it kind of sounded like the gentleman that I saw on Hard Knocks, and that's
Rod
why
Martin.
I put the two
Martin.
together.
Yeah. I'm acquainted with Rod Martin because I met Rod at the Raider training camp. Actually, I met him twice, but the last time I met him was at the training camp of last year. 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. Hey, so having said all that, talk to us about how you think the Raiders are going to perform this year and why. What's your prediction? I think it went in 10-6, but I'm not sure if I'm right about that.
I was 7-9.
7-9, yeah, 7-9.
And don't get me wrong, I'm a complete diehard optimist. I'm trying to be realistic for the sake of our conversations that we have, not only online but here on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
My heart says 10-6 or 11-5.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, when I think about the schedule that they put us under, 7 weeks, we're not going to be even at home. There's no home game. And the opponents that we have, it's going to be a rough patch. But this builds character. If anything, we've always been, Raiders always, typical of the autumn wind, man. We're Pirates, we're blistering from, we're rugged, and I think this is going to build a lot of character on the team. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of young guys. And that's one thing we have to also take in consideration. As great as these young kids are, they've never played in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And you have someone like Abram, who even said himself today that as jacked up as he is, and he was great in college, he goes, man, this is a whole nother level.
Sure is.
And so there's going to be growing pains. But I think realistically 7-9, and I know a lot of us don't want to hear that, but considering all these things that are in front of them, I think it's a success at 7-9, to be honest with you. Now, like I said, don't get me wrong, I want them to go, 11-5, 10-6. But I think what might come down to is the schedule that they have. I mean, there's a lot of traveling. That puts a lot of wear and tear on the body. You probably know more than anybody. You're always flying from Atlanta back to Oakland. I mean, even though you're not flying yourself, it takes toll on the body.
Yeah, it does take a toll. I mean, I want to get to Riot Abbott's question. Riot. I'm sorry, sorry, Ryan. I didn't mean to call you Riot, although you might be a riot in person. But Ryan asks, he says, "What about the Kevin Durant Achilles tear? Is the only fix surgery in your opinion, or does it heal on its own?" I don't know the answer to that question. What say you?
With all the surgery I had, I think probably one of the top specialists at Cedars-Sinai, and he's considered a doctor's doctor. Something like that, it's going to have to be surgery. I mean, there's not unless somewhere there's experimental treatment. I don't think stem cell therapy or anything like that. Anything that's ripped or torn like that, I mean, there's no other way for that to heal. From my understanding of that kind of injury. For example, let me go reference my situation again. I broke my talus bone, which is the bone that connects your leg and your foot.
Yeah.
And so if I didn't have my ankles fused, so I can loudly move it up and down, but I can't rotate my left ankle.
Oh my gosh.
Right, but it allowed me to keep my foot. And because initially they wanted to amputate, and I said no, and I fought for about 4 or 5 years trying to heal this. And so what it came down to was that those are sensitive bone areas, anywhere it has to do with the ankle and foot. My talus bone was so badly damaged, it became mush. He said it was like oatmeal.
Oh.
And if they didn't put rods in it, I wouldn't have a foot.
Oh my Lord.
And so, something that has to do with the tendons, probably not as abrasive, because you're not talking about something that's deteriorated like a bone that's holding up the foot and the leg. But something like a tendon has to be repaired.
Oh my Lord. Do you have the idea that he'll be ready by the first game?
I don't think so, to be honest with you, because that what happens in the foot area for myself, like that, going on this personal experience, is that there's a weight issue too. You're putting a lot of weight on your feet, and especially with something that has to heal to that degree. That's why you see a lot of people wearing boots, or you see people who've had surgery on the foot or ankle. They have that new knee scooter, because you have to be non-weight bearing for a considerable amount of time. And the challenge is going to be any athlete, any human being even myself, the challenge for me was not to start walking or trying to get on my 2 feet as soon as I can, because that's the urgency. You just want to go out and do things. And being the athlete, that kind of caliber of an athlete, I'm sure the first thing he wants to do once he starts feeling a little bit better, the swelling goes down, the pain goes down, he just wants to go out there and do his normal routine, and you have to be extremely disciplined not to do that.
Hey, we're on with Joseph Armendariz talking about Antonio Brown's foot injury and his conversation with Oakland Raiders coach Rod Martin, where he imparted a way of effectively healing, at least theoretically, Antonio Brown's foot injury. Hey, Joseph, what do you think of the Raiders basically entirely turning over? When I mean turning over, I mean changing their offense. I mean, all the starting receivers are brand new, including the tight end. There's basically no turnover. It's a brand new team. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the first thing was, I think you see about, and this is what we have to be hopeful for. All these young guys are so motivated, they're hungry, and they seem to really, really enjoy each other. And that was a great thing to see. If one of the episodes, I'm going to reference yesterday's episode, Cleveland Farrell was leading some of the defensive players in a prayer. And if you recall, he makes the funny jokes like, thank you, Lord, for bringing these weird group of characters, white, black, Mexican, and then really black.
Yeah.
But he made it such in a funny way, and
Yeah.
that is such a great thing to see.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're bonding and they're having fun with each other and they're teasing each other, and that's the one thing that people don't realize. Well, how come he could say that? Well, it's because, for example, I'm Hispanic or you're African American. We could tease about each other because we're doing it out of a place of love. We're teasing our ethnicity, but it comes from a place of love and
Oh
brotherhood.
yeah, right, absolutely.
And so that was fun to see, and it was silly, but it was fun. And you see that they're doing that more and more, and obviously the camera's on them, so who knows if they even did that in the years past. But these people really seem to enjoy each other, and that's the great thing about this team, because through thick and thin, it looks like they have each other's back, and they're going to help each other, whenever they're struggling.
I can say, as a person who's covered the NFL and the Raiders for years, that's the way teams are. That's the way players are. Um, they're human beings, and I've been in a lot of situations. I remember when one Raider tight end, I think he had some business that I was supposed to be, that they were considering to bring me in on. This was a long time ago. And so we wound up in his hotel room. It was actually Andre Glover and a couple of other people, just talking business, and that was way back. Wow. I want to say that's like 1995 or something like that, when I was a columnist with the Montclarian, before 94, 95, when I was a columnist with the Montclarian. That was a long time ago, somewhere in there. And so it wasn't 94, 95, I'm sorry, it was 95, 96. The Raiders had just come back. And I was a columnist, yeah, the Raiders had just come back from Oakland. But that's, you see the players in a lot of situations, There are people who, I remember when I met Mike Shanahan for the first time, when the Broncos beat the Raiders at the Coliseum. That was 1995. And the Broncos had a tight end injury and went to a 4 and 5 wide receiver sets, which caught the Raiders completely off guard. And so I had a set of technical questions for Shanahan, and he seemed visibly annoyed that I actually knew football strategy. I mean, he actually acted like as if he resented that I asked him a technical question. I didn't know if he thought I was trying to steal some ideas, or which wasn't the case, or get him to give up something he didn't want to say, which wasn't the case either. But all I know is that my that was my only encounter with him. His son's a lot better toward me, but yeah, it was just really bizarre. My point is that it was just really bizarre. My point is that players are as different as, well, just anybody else. You're gonna encounter people and they have funny situations, and sometimes you're gonna encounter people who are not so cool. That's the way it is. But the common denominator with respect to the NFL has always been a sense of togetherness, and that's what that follows players through their time as veterans, older veterans, retired veterans we call legends. There really is a sense of a shared experience, and I think you see a lot of that coming through.
Do you think that was the case last year? I mean, sometimes perception is reality, but it's maybe not necessarily the case. It just seems, the reason why I brought it up earlier when I did mention what I did mention was it just seemed like there's more of a friendly togetherness as opposed to what was last year. And maybe it's because of the struggles. We had Bruce Irvin that complained, I believe, and a few other players.
I'm going to say, I think if you had seen the Raiders...
But you can correct me. I mean, that's an impression
I don't feel like I'm correcting. I'm just
year.
answering your question. I don't feel like it's a corrective. But I will say that I think that a large part of what you're influenced by was what you saw in Hard Knocks. And I'm not talking about how it was edited or anything like that. I mean the simple fact that the Raiders were on Hard Knocks. If the Raiders were on Hard Knocks last year and then this year, you would have gotten used to seeing a certain camaraderie that that comes with any training camp. What you don't see, and you're not
Right.
going to see it this year, you didn't see it last year, you heard about it, is how the team responds when they don't do well. Okay? Right now, look, it's 0-0. The Raiders have not played a game on the field. So everything is peachy keen, you know, for the most part. But, you know, hopefully not. But what happens when the wheels come off? That's when you really see how the team is. And, you know, that's why I think it's very important to have a core of people that come through and you can keep. But the Raiders really hurt themselves financially with the way this Vegas move was done. And I understand that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but the question is how much of your soul are you willing to sell to get there? And I
That,
think
I agree with that. I mean, I did not like that Vegas move, even though they're a lot closer to me than going driving down to Oakland. But I'd rather have them stay in Oakland if they couldn't come down to LA.
I see the reasons for doing it, but being on, I don't like the way it was done. I mean, I think it could have been done in a lot more open way. It was too secretive, and you know, Mark even to this point is still singing the song to anybody in Vegas that will listen. Oh, you know, they kicked me out. His latest tune is they kicked me out of the stadium. Well, actually, he's still there. And I mean, there are people who wanted it to kick him out, but then he didn't tell the truth regarding how he misled the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda. And that's what they talk about. I'm not saying that the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda ran the Coliseum perfectly. They didn't. However, with Scott McKibben as executive director since 2014, they've done a fantastic job. Now, Mark is crying about having to pay more rent, but what he doesn't tell you is this. For 23 years, 23 seasons, 24 if you count this one, the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda have paid the game day expenses for the Raiders totaling over $207 million. Okay? $207 million. That continues to this day. They're not going to get that kind of gift in Las Vegas. Now, of course, they're making a lot more money. That's absolutely the case, so they're not going to have to worry about it with the revenues that are coming in. That's a great thing. But let's be honest. The Raiders received a massive gift from what we call the East Bay entities, the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda, and they received it over multiple years, totaling $207 million. And then if it wasn't that, okay, the city was always ready to work with them on something that had to do with helping them in the city they were in. That's just a fact. So it's so Mark. What Mark did? Mark never wanted to be in Oakland. All right. David Burgess asked, "Do other cities usually pay game day expenses?" The answer is a flat no. No, the Raiders had got a gift. Okay, you can't go around the NFL and find any other team that can say that the municipalities have paid their game day expenses as part of their lease agreement since they returned, since 1995, okay? You're not going to find that. So they received...
Now, besides getting a new stadium, wasn't that one of the reasons why they went back to Oakland after the 94 season in LA?
They went back to Oakland because Mr. Davis, Mark's dad, contended that, actually I'll say contends, active voice, but contends that the LA County Coliseum reneged on their deal. See, very much like the whole gambling situation now, Mark's dad saw a gold mine in pay-per-view. He saw this was ESPN had just gotten started in '84. Cable was in its infancy. Pay-per-view was the big thing, and Al wanted to get a part of that. Okay, he wanted to be a part of that. So he saw the future of that back in '79, and really, I think through a series of monkey wrenches into his Oakland situation, that that gave him a raison d'etre, a reason to leave to go to L.A., where he thought the economic pastures were greener at the time. But when he got down there, first of all, the pay-per-view infrastructure that he envisioned being there wasn't there. The deal wasn't there. And then, of equal note to him, the luxury boxes that he thought he was going to get from the LA County Coliseum Commission never materialized. And so that was the huge deal. And so and in addition, the Raiders were not performing well. In Los Angeles, the Coliseum has always been a special place to play. And in those days, it was very special because the Raiders lived in Oakland. They were part of the fabric of the community, and they won because of the fabric of the community. You know, it's not like today where, you know, a lot of Raiders don't live there, and of course now they're moving to Vegas. But back in the 70s and the very early 80s, before they left, well, let's say 70s because they left after 81. But the whole point is they lived in Oakland. If you wanted to go and, you know, get a glimpse or maybe an autograph with Ken Stabler, or maybe you were a young lady and you looking for a good time and you heard that Ken Stabler and his guys were going to give you one at Joe Scoma's, you were headed down to Joe Scoma's. It was a different time. It wasn't cell phones. They didn't have to worry about somebody taking an inappropriate picture of them or putting them on live stream or anything else. They could hang out and just be with people, just be with folks and be with friends. And that's how the fan base developed. The fan base then was much more of a personal nature than it is today, by light years. You know, light years. There's no comparison.
And I can relate to that a little bit. Where the Cowboys have their facility now in Oxnard was the Raiders facility when they were here. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to the training facility, and that was an experience that I will never forget, because once the practices were over, they let the fans go on the field and intermingle with the players. And as a kid, that was incredible. And not only that, I remember there being a Raiderettes there, and of course, being prepubescent and going to my puberty days, man, that was like the best thing, is seeing Raiderettes there.
Oh, yeah. And see, I was a Raiderette judge. I was a Raiderette judge from 1997 to 98. 2 years, 97 to 98. And that was a lot of fun. I was known, and George Atkinson will tell you this, I was known for choosing the candidate that was the tallest and if they were an attorney and they were 5'9", boom. It was so funny that George Atkinson would turn around if a woman fit that bill. You're like, oh, she's a lawyer or something, and then she's, you know, all this, and then she was tall. George would just turn around and look at me and just point. Because I think it bothered unfortunately, some of the Raiders staff, because the Raiders wanted women who were short, and they wanted women who were like 5'4", 5'2", 5'3", and dancers. But the one thing they always said that I remember one of the Raider, it was Cheryl Nichols, I believe, was saying that the Raiderettes you select have to have a smile so incandescent that you can quite literally pick them out from the third deck. You know, so you're third deck, binoculars, and that smile just jumps out and you lock in on them. And that's what we were asked to find. I mean, my thought was you could find that regardless of height, but
right.
The Raiderette type was definitely shorter. And it's interesting that they have this lawsuit, and that the two women that brought the lawsuit forward were law school students and lawyers. The Raiders, even back then, you know, it's a sad statement in our society that had to happen. But what they should have done, even back then, was made the cheerleaders true monetary partners in the team, because they asked them to go on these community visits and they asked them to represent the Raiders in the community, and yet they were paying them only $15 a game. You hear what I said?
Yeah.
$15 a game. All right. Now, as opposed to 45,000 a game or something like that, which would be, a great. If you figure like eight times eight is 48. That's $48,000 a year. That's not bad. You can do that. Work other jobs. Do that during that on a Sunday. Have your own law practice. And come out really financially great as a Raiderette, famous. And monetarily middle class, which would be pretty good. But the Raiders didn't do that, and it's sad. I really think that they missed developing a whole gigantic set of women who would have been able to serve as ambassadors for other women in society in many different ways. And there's still a chance to do that, but now you've got a situation where now you have male cheerleaders with the women, and it's kind of like, it just doesn't feel like there's this opportunity for the kind of female empowerment that I'm talking about. Although maybe maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just cynical in that respect. But because I believe that if you're going to have cheerleaders as a symbol, you've got to do something that makes them financially set and respected in the community. And if you're not doing those two things, you're not really helping them. It's just more than the name and the cheerleaders. I'm going to go off on that, but that's a big deal with me. How the Raiderettes and how cheerleaders in general in pro football are handled is a sore spot with me. It just is.
Well, I agree on that point. I think historically, for whatever reason, cheerleaders have never gotten paid. A little story: my father used to work for Safeway Distribution Center, and one of his coworkers was a young lady who worked full time there, but was a Raiderette, and she really had to work because of some of the things that she had to buy was out of her own pocket. So not only are they performing basically for free, they're responsible for buying some of their gear.
Yeah, which shouldn't be. That should all be on the tab of the Raiders and not them. Now the Raiders then would say, well, we'll always find somebody else because they all want to be. Well, so what? It doesn't mean that you have to abuse them. Abuse the privilege of being wanted. And that's never a good thing, folks. I'll tell you, in any line of business or walk of life, don't take advantage of a person because they want to be under your brand or umbrella. But there's a lot of that goes on in sports. Okay, there are a lot of people who are underpaid in sports because you want to work for us, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But a lot of organizations get away with it. They have internships where, you might learn something, but then you don't get paid. Every internship should be a paid opportunity, folks, in sports. Every single one. I don't care. Maybe you're not making a lot of money, or maybe you can't offer a lot of money, but offer something. Offer something. Ryan Abbott says, OJ lives in Vegas and will come out of retirement to play for the Raiders. He's well rested, too. Are you suggesting OJ for an internship? Just asking. Ryan Abbott also says, if they would have waited for the LA sponsorship deal, they could have gotten 600 to 650 in naming rights. What are you talking about there? I'm not cluing in, Ryan. So at any rate, you lost me there. Hey, so we've been on for 44 minutes. I thought this has gone well. Anything else you want to share, Joseph?
No, I think we all got to keep our prayers, for all the massive shootings that have been going on, and
yes.
I give,
yes,
make sure that we keep those people in our thoughts and prayers. I look forward to the season. I did have one question for you, but maybe you can help me answer.
Sure.
Now we know the Vegas Review Journal. It seems like they're being kind of handled by the Raiders. Now, isn't that owned by the Addison Group?
You know, the Las Vegas Review Journal is owned by now Shedd Adelson. He bought it November 14th of 2015. And he bought it for $140 million. He overpaid it for it. Now, the talk around Vegas was, gee, why did he spend so much money for this publication? And the immediate speculation was that he wanted it as a mouthpiece, okay, for whatever projects or endeavors he intended to get involved in or do. And that's exactly what happened. So a number of people who felt that it was inappropriate for him to own the Review Journal, as journalists wanted to write about it, and they're prohibited from doing so, and so they quit. I mean, the Review Journal is a perfect example of where media is today. Let me say this: it's not against the law to do that. If you have the money to buy a publication, you buy a publication. There are people who pay Zenny 62 Media, pay me, because they want their story out there. Because look, you can't get somebody else in the media to write things the way that you want written. And this is the internet age. This isn't the age where, let's say 30 years ago, you took your story to the Oakland Tribune and you hoped that they put it in the paper, but you did so because they had a printing press and you didn't own a printing press. But today it's very easy to start websites and assemble these platforms if you know the right programming and how to make the right programming language combinations. And I can go on and on and on for quite some time about that. I'm the first YouTube partner in Oakland. I started Oakland's first blog, Oakland Focus, in 2004. I was at the launch party at Mighty in 2006 for a little company, a little effort called Twitter. That was in March. It was a lot of fun. Actually, it was 2007, excuse me. And at that time, Twitter was smaller than its competitor called Pounce, which was started by the former sex writer Leah Colbert, who happened to be a brilliant programmer, and sold her effort to Six Apart, and then kind of watched it fade away. But as Twitter was getting started, Pounce was much bigger in terms of users, right? So, point that I'm making is that as a person who's been on the ground floor of all of this, I have been on the ground floor of a different way of expressing yourself, getting your personal word out there. And today that's where it is. And so what the Review Journal is doing is basically that, getting its own personal word out there writ large, okay? And the only way to fight that, if you're going to fight it, is you have to have your own money and your own blog effort. You can't do it through Facebook or some other social media network that isn't an open system where if you post something, it gets posted on every other search engine. You have to have your own platform. But having said that, that's what Adelson did. And so, look, you could gauge, and to this day, the stadium project would not have gotten as far as it did without the constant pumping of fake news, a lot of the time, by the Review Journal. And so I feel I exist as a foil, in terms of what I'm doing, as a foil to the Review Journal in their efforts. And by and large, I think I've been more successful than not. Because absent anyone else, look, no Oakland paper organization or media company was doing it. The Chronicle wasn't doing it. You didn't have a single voice, and you don't have a single voice in the Bay Area or in Oakland. And even the Oakland Post, and I love Paul Cobb and the Post, but I'm just telling the truth, that was focused on telling the truth about the Raiders in Las Vegas. Okay?
And having said that, I know one of the things you always bring up, how misleading some of the articles or posts by the Review Journal. Having said that, it seems like they're putting a big spin, right?
Yeah.
On the stadium construction. Now, wouldn't you think if Allison has his bone to pick with the Raiders, he would do the opposite? But what do you think the end game is there, and why do you think they're doing
Well, I'll tell
things
you.
the way they are?
I'll tell you. First of all, prior to February 26th of 19, excuse me, 19, February 26th of 2017, the Review Journal was on the side of the Raiders because everyone knew that Mr. Adelson was the person that was bringing the Raiders to the Las Vegas Valley in search of, as they put it then, a new stadium home. Okay? And Adelson wanted to put in his own personal wealth. As he had said one point on his own, what he was going to spend at Las Vegas Stadium, or for Las Vegas Stadium, was a rounding order in his total net worth of what is now $35 billion, okay? But see, Adelson, one thing people don't understand about why Adelson got involved with this is it has to do with what I call the 1,000-year war he has had with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau. Now, keep that in mind every time you read or happen to see a headline from the Review Journal that talks about Rossi Ridlencotter, the former executive director of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, who was found in part by the Review Journal's own investigations of financial improprieties, okay? But the reason they did all that is because of the enormous amount of money that the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority was sucking from the hotel stadium tax and using it to maintain the Las Vegas Convention Center system, all right, which is among the best in the world. And so, but see, from Adelson's standpoint, and he has Sands Expo, Mr. Adelson created Comdex, and Comdex turned into CES, okay? But Comdex grew, and it gave him the idea that he needed to build his own privately financed, privately built convention center, and that's if you've ever been to Las Vegas, you know what Sands Expo is all about, right? That's what Sands Expo is. If you ever attended CES, you know that Sands Expo is a major venue player at CES, okay? That's his effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, but see, Adelson has resented the expenditure of public money because he's a right-wing guy. He's a guy who believes in the free market. All right, I happen to believe the free market doesn't exist. That's another point. He believes in the free market. He thinks the free market means I get to get over on you with my own brains. And so that's what, to a lot of people who get up to that level, that's what the free market really means to them. They will never say it that way. Like Donald Trump, for example. My whole point is that Mr. Adelson basically said, hey, you know what? I am going to figure out a way to keep that hotel tax away from you when you expand. I don't want you to expand, all right? I want you, we need something more than an expanded convention center because he felt that an expanded convention center wasn't really going to result in more hotels, okay? Or he felt that this is how he felt. Adelson felt, you know what? The people that do our conventions here now have no thought of leaving Las Vegas. Like CES had no thought. They threatened once, but they really had no thought of leaving Las Vegas. And I have said before, I've said it for years, and I'll say it now, and I'm saying it again, Las Vegas is the best place for CES ever. If CES were someplace else, chances are I may not go to it, but, well, that's not true. But the whole point is, CES is perfect for Las Vegas. Las Vegas is perfect for CES, okay? And the thousands, 200,000 people that it attracts. Places, things like that, we're not going to leave. So Adelson's point was, look, a major stadium, a large-scale event center of the size of the Coliseum or the LA Coliseum or Texas Stadium or Dallas Cowboys Stadium or MetLife Stadium or Soldiers Field, that kind of facility Las Vegas did not have. The largest facility it had and has was 40,000 seat. Sam Boyd Stadium is 40 years old. So his point, Adelson's, was, look, a stadium is a must-have. We got to have it. Jim Mironov, the CEO of MGM, said, no, it's not a must-have, it's a nice-to-have. Adelson said, no, it's not, because, again, we're not going to lose the convention producers that are in Las Vegas. They're not going to go to another city. He said, you talk to them, they're not going anyplace else. But you have a new stadium, it gives them an opportunity to get events that currently they don't have the ability to host. Taylor Swift and 46,000 people, where are you going to put them? Where are you going to put Taylor Swift and 46,000? Sam Boyd Stadium? Heck no. Right? So, but when at what is now called Allegiant Stadium is finished, Taylor Swift will do her concert there. BTS? You think BTS can't attract 65,000 people? Just wait. BTS will bring 65,000 to Las Vegas in that facility. All right? So look, that facility, Adelson was genius. He called it right. He saw
Potential.
He saw the idea, and Napoleon Kaufman, who played with the Raiders, who worked for and still works for Adelson, was the person who said, hey, you know what? I understand the Raiders are looking for a new stadium. I'm going to go talk to Mark. And on top of all that, there were these two professors at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, that had figured out how to restructure gambling in such a way that the twin bugaboos of corruption corruption and process, all right, which if you don't have a good process, it leads to corruption, all right. They saw a way, and they documented it. It's a paper that's available, and I'll actually repost it on Oakland News Now, and I'll let everybody know that is, because you really got to sit down and read it. It's not a fun read either, but it's just something to get your mind around what Mark was really thinking about, and what drove him to say, I need to do this. My issue is that he should not have done that in secret, because what he is doing can be done in Oakland, and because of the Supreme Court ruling, eventually it's going to be done nationwide. It's already happening. It's just a matter of time, okay? But instead of saying to Oakland, hey, look, I found this document and I want you guys to head in this direction, he kept everything under wraps, because he knew at the time, and Eric Grubman knew at the time, and Jerry Jones knew at the time, but Jerry Jones believed he could sell the idea of the NFL moving toward gambling. And you have to consider that at the time, the NFL was already involved in litigation against Tony Romo for even having a charity event in Las Vegas next to a casino. All right? Between Tony Romo and FanDuel. So that's all people forget if they ever pay attention. That all went away. Now, in the middle of all of that, when Adelson purchased the Review Journal, it gave him the appropriate way of having some influence, not control, but influence over the message. Because he did so at a time when the rest of the media was quite literally circling down the drain because they didn't have enough revenue to pay journalists. And journalists were going off. And the thing about it is that what journalists have to realize is that craft of knowing how to write, because of the nature of being able to put the written page on the computer and do so economically, is now tossed out to many different people. You know what I mean? And it's not something that they can say, well, I am a journalist, I know how to do this. Everybody can call. You did it. You proved it this time. You made a call.
Yeah.
You asked a question of a news-making organization and a newsmaker, and you got an answer. Those things are what journalists have done for decades, and arguably centuries since the idea was even created. And but now everybody can do it. All you need is the proper outlet, like you have today, to express what you learn and share it with other people. That simple dynamic is destroying media. If you don't have the money to buy computers and pay people. You know, the review journals are losing $1 million a year. $1 million a year.
Well, I believe it. Nobody buys the printed paper no more.
Right. But see, so the question is, okay, if that's not the case, why does Adelson still have it, right? But my point is that what Adelson has done after February 26th of 2017, and what happened on that day was the day that he and his right hand in public relations, Andy's last name just flew out of my head, when they discovered that Mark Bourdain and Mark Davis had, from their perspective, went behind their back and didn't mention any kind of revenue share with them in the proposed lease PDF that went out there, all right? When that got leaked, they hit the ceiling and said, we don't want to do anything with them. Now, I to this day believe that was a trick. I think they did it for one reason. I think they did it under the behest of Jerry Jones, and I think they did it because they knew if they had went in as the partner with Jones, they would not have gotten full NFL backing. That wouldn't have been a 31-1, that vote. That would have been something where they would have lost because they didn't want to be associated with gambling. So this time, what happened was when they walked in there, when Davis walked in there, he had no signs of having any deal with anybody who was involved with gambling. So he went in with a situation that looked clean. But there's a little clause in Senate Bill 1 that is important to read. It states that the entities do not have to, or I'm paraphrasing, share financial information with the public. That means if I have Adelson's help, I don't have to tell you. And I remember a person with one of the media outlets told me on a private conversation that, and I quote, there are a lot of hands in this deal that shouldn't be there. And I said, what do you mean? She said, all I got to say is there are a lot of hands in this deal that shouldn't be there. Now, what that means to me is you've got a lot of people that are pulling Mark's string, and he is really, he's really under the gun, he's really under a lot of pressure. So when you hear about him making these appearances and everything around Vegas, he's dancing to somebody's tune. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe that bed was set up by Adelson. It says, look, you have to do this, and this, because we gave you $750 million to build this thing. But even then, they got a great naming rights deal, but they're still not out of the woods. They're still about $700 million in the hole. I mean, you can't just have four someone might get upset with my saying this, but think about it. You need $1 billion in sponsorship. You can't just say I got 4 and that's it. Every other NFL stadium that's new has between 11 and 14 founding partners. They still have work to do. So this thing, I mean, that's a great thing that they got. That's a great deal that they got. No question about it. Okay? Very proud of them. But they have a long way to go. And what happened was after the deal looked bad, after the whole double cross thing happened, according to Adelson, and on February 26th of 2017, put it out in his publication. Remember his publication. Hey, I'm not going to work with him anymore. For 4 months, they got nothing but bad press from him. Then after 4 months, it's like the clouds cleared. All right, and then all of a sudden you heard nothing but good news and fake news and all this other stuff. If that alone doesn't tell you what's really going on in terms of Adelson's control, nothing else will. Because anyone who knows Adelson or Vegas knows that he could have pulled the plug on it like that. Plus, the dude financed the President of the United States to a tune of $125 million. Okay? When you look at Donald Trump giving his inaugural address, who's sitting on his right? It's Adelson. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and his wife. So make no mistake about that. All right. Mark he's in a good position, but sometimes I think he's in a scary position. I think we'll see what happens. That's all we can do.
Yeah. Having been in urban planning yourself, quickly, you know that stadium's not going to be ready next year. Has anybody, maybe Scott McKibben has maybe acknowledged it with you? They know that stadium's not going to be ready. So I believe they're going to play in Oakland next year as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it'll be ready October 31st of next year, and they'll have it ready in time, hopefully for them, to host the Pac-12 championship. They've got time. All right. So,
now, do you know if anybody in the Raiders has acknowledged that secretly? I know they publicly they won't.
No, they're not going to, because they're trying to get sponsors, and they don't want to pull out the rug from Legendary, especially now that they're really cooking with getting these deals in, right? But look, there's a lot of workaround they got to do. There's a reason why they don't have a Super Bowl. Normally, an NFL organization building a new stadium by this point in time would have their Super Bowl game set.
Scheduled.
You know exactly when it was happening. That hurts them in terms of getting sponsorships for the most part, but you would say, well, how did they get Allegiant? Look, that's Vegas. That's the governor. You have what you don't have in California, the involvement of the governor. You have in Nevada. So you have the remember that Sisolak was on the Governor Sandoval's committee. He was a major proponent of this thing, and now he's governor. I mean, how cool is that from the Raiders' perspective? But also, it puts Steve in the boss seat. Okay? Cowboy Russia says the Raiders won't announce a stadium delay until the last minute. And by the way, and I'm going to do another video where I praise Scott, but the whole point is that Scott told me the Raiders have until April 1st to let him know what they're going to do. April 1st.
That's an ironic date, April 1st.
Yeah, there's no April Fool. No April Fool. All right, so it's 1:32. This has been a great show, man. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, appreciate it.
Got it. Hey, thanks for coming on. I got to say, I've got, between Donald Richardson, Richard Hike, yourself, my viewers are actually the best guests I've had. Well, among the best guests. I don't want to take anything away from the people I've had, like Lee or Hill Caro earlier today. But and if you haven't had a chance, please listen to Hill Caro's my interview with him. He talks about the stadium naming rights deal, and it's a great conversation. It really is. Yeah.
Well, I do want to say I appreciate everything that you're doing. It's really informative, and I think it brings out the best in all of us.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
I want to wish everybody good night. And my two niece and nephew, the one you said hi to, so I just want to say good night to Madeline and Mason. They're both 4-year-old twins, but they always listen to my podcast with me.
Oh,
so.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, definitely. We'll have you back on, man. Just keep breaking news.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right, man. I'll see you. See you. Good night, everybody. Hey, tomorrow we'll be back after the games, because I want to talk about Kyler Murray, because if I'm not mistaken, he debuts tomorrow. All right, see you guys later. Good night. Okay, see ya. See, thanks all. Oh, I missed something, folks. I think, hold on a second. Brian Abbott says, is this a sports medicine doctor? He has worked with Vince Conti of Balco. No. Does he have an opinion on... I didn't ask him about that. But Brian Abbott says, recently listened to a Wondery podcast, American Scandal, about Balco, Victor Conti, Barry Bonds. Yeah, I think there's a guest I'm going to have on about that. I got to track him down and see if he wants to come on. Okay, thanks for the idea. Cowboy Wrestler adds, the Raiders won't announce stadium delay until last minute. March 2019 seems like the most logical time when an announcement would come. All right. Hey, thanks, everybody. Okay, see ya.